This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by. This is the broadcast from City Hall, the home of the Greater London Authority. Please stand by.
Welcome to today's meeting of the Fire Committee. On our agenda today is the second part of the committee's investigation into the risk of firefighters' exposure to contaminants and its impact on their health and well-being. Before we begin, we have a few small items of business. Please may I remind participants to silence your devices. Members of the public may like to follow @London Assembly on social media and use the hashtag #AssemblyFire for this meeting. Can I ask our clerk, Diane Richards, to confirm any apologies for today's meeting?
Thank you, Chair. No apologies for absence have been received today.
Thank you, Diane. Can we note the list of offices held by Assembly members, and can I also ask members if they have any disclosable pecuniary interests in specific items listed on the agenda? Thank you. Can we confirm the minutes of a meeting held on 16th of September 2025? Thank you. Can we note the completed and outstanding actions arising from previous meetings of the committee and the additional correspondence sent and received? Thank you. Can we also note the response from the London Fire Commissioner to the committee's letter on key priorities for the London Fire Commissioner? Excellent. We now move on to our main item, the second part of the committee's investigation into the risk of firefighters' exposure to contaminants and its impact on their health and well-being, which we'll be discussing with representatives from the Fire Brigade Union and the London Fire Brigade. I'd like to welcome our first panel of guests to the Chamber this morning. Welcome back Gareth Beaton, London Regional Chair of the FBU, and Carl Smith, Health and Safety Deputy, London Fire Brigade Union. So Gareth, if I could start with you, what is your assessment of the scale and impact of contaminant exposure to firefighters in London?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for inviting us today. It's most welcome. It is an ongoing campaign by the Fire Brigades Union nationally and locally in regard to contaminants and contamination of firefighters and the potential to cause harm to firefighters with cancers. I'm going to let Carl come in more specifically on London issues, but London Fire Brigade, by its default, is the biggest, the busiest, the largest fire and rescue service in the UK and the fourth largest in the world. So the number of firefighters that are exposed to arguably the largest number of fires as well, it has to have an effect on London firefighters. But more figures, I'll let Carl come in to give more detailed figures in regard to that individual question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you want to jump in there, Carl?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, considering what Gareth said there about London Fire Brigade being the busiest fire and rescue service in the UK, and also considering the range of incidents that it attends, if we put that into relation to the surveys, to the studies that have been conducted throughout the UK as a whole, we know that firefighters are over 3 times higher likely to suffer cancer in their life. We know that 4% of firefighters already surveyed have a cancer diagnosis. You know, the figures for any serving firefighter are extremely alarming. In fact, the World Health Organization has recognised the occupation of a firefighter as an A1, sorry, a 1A occupation. So this is the highest level of risk for cancer. They've actually stated that it's being a firefighter is the same as equivalent to smoking 20 cigarettes a day. So you can imagine, you know, that's the risk that our frontline firefighters are faced with. If we think about London specifically, we have had some very notable incidents, obviously Grenfell Tower being one of those. And we know that more than 800 London firefighters have been exposed to exceptionally high toxin levels at that incident. And we've got long-term health consequences which are still emerging. And then if we go a step further, so London obviously being a very progressive city, we've got modern buildings which have been obviously built all the time. Within those modern buildings, we've got new methods of construction. So we've got plastics, installation, flame retardants, which release a whole host of very, very nasty chemicals, hydrogen cyanide, dioxins, formaldehyde, all sorts of nasties that are all carcinogens that our firefighters are exposed to. And also, we've got electric vehicle fires, which, again, London is seeing the most significant electric vehicle fires. Again, we're adding new chemicals to that, so hydrogen fluoride, heavy metals like cobalt, for example. So, you know, our London firefighters are exposed to a huge amount of carcinogens, and it's really important that we apply proportionality, so health and safety proportionality to the risks that our firefighters face. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. A few of us on the committee have had an amazing couple of visits over the last 2 weeks to Poplar Fire Station and Old Kent Road Fire Station, and thank you to all the brilliant members of staff that we met there and the firefighters. One of the things they were talking about is the difference between how they used to go home in their uniforms and not know the risks and starting to know the risks more. Do you think we know enough about the research between contaminants and health risks?
If I may answer that,
yeah, please.
Chair. So, no, to be honest with you, I don't think we know all the risks. There has been a whole host of surveys and scientific studies which point very clearly towards contaminants having a direct link to cancer. I think there's only a very few die-hard people that would refute that evidence. The FBU had the University of Lancaster who conducted the study which again demonstrated that there is a clear link. But do we know enough? No, I don't think we do. I think there needs to be more independent investigation of it, research. It needs to be longitudinal, so it needs to be a longer period. We need to be looking at 10, 15 years into the future and really like assessing the risks that they face. You've got the Grenfell cohort as well. Those that went through Grenfell, we need to apply a significant amount of health monitoring to that cohort so we can see the effects that it has on them over that period of time. And that's really going to secure what we already know as firefighters. We already know that we see a vast amount of our colleagues, our members in the FBU, leaving service and then being diagnosed with cancers, bladder cancer being the most common, which for us, again, is very, very emotive. So we know that, we know the science points to it, but because there is still that reluctance to completely agree that there is a link, we need to continue with the research, and the research needs to be independent. I don't think we can rely on anyone that has a affiliation with any service that would potentially not want to see the link. It needs to be independent for our purposes.
And where would you say that reluctance is coming from? Where is that reluctance coming from? You said there's a reluctance.
So I think the reluctance comes from, and I'm not pointing specifically at London here, but certainly in the UK, some of the fire services have always been reluctant to adopt new procedures, new policies, which incorporate contamination control measures for contamination. It's always been a reluctance through certain professional associations within the UK. Not so much now, but certainly in the past. But when I mention about there being a die-hard section, there are still a few people in the UK that will hesitate and say, well, actually, we haven't got all the evidence. And to be honest with you, I don't think that argument holds up anymore. It's, you know, all the evidence points to it. So I wouldn't like to pinpoint anyone in particular.
Yeah.
However, there are individuals with that view.
Thank you. And in terms of new research, sorry, final question from me for now. Who do you think should be leading that? Like, who should be taking responsibility for this?
That's a good question, Chair. To be honest, I couldn't identify the exact organisation that should be doing it. All I would say is they need to be independent. So we need to do the due diligence on that organisation to ensure that they are independent and they have no affiliation, no interest anywhere else, so that their findings can be completely relevant.
Thank you. I said finally, but I've got one more finally. One of the conversations I had was with a firefighter who was looking at the science around this and talking about the studies. And he said one of the issues was with retired firefighters, that for the sampling reasons and the people who might come forward, it's very difficult to get a control group and to get an accurate sample of people who have left the fire brigade. Is there any work you would like to see with retired firefighters, and has there been much thought about how you can get the right sample size?
Yes, so we think there is. We've actively asked for a health monitoring for all firefighters, and we've asked for that health monitoring to extend to retired firefighters as well. You know, to ensure that they, for want of a better word, from cradle to grave within your service and beyond, that you are monitored for what is an increased risk to cancer and other diseases, it has to be said. So we would like, and this goes into, you know, recognising firefighting as being cancer being an occupational hazard, a bit of firefighting, and recognising that, and recognising that some of those cancers take years to progress, and by the time you've had a diagnosis, you could be retired. We need that recognised so that they can be monitored throughout that whole process. Again, I think in the UK that's something that people are reluctant to do, fire services are reluctant to do, because it means a duty of care beyond their employment, which, you know, for us, morally, we think they still hold that duty, but they would say legally they don't, and therein lies the issue.
Yeah, it seems obvious if someone's given up their life to be doing all that work, we should be looking after them afterwards. Gareth?
Yeah, I'd just like to come in to add to that. So in England, and not in Scotland. Scotland, when you die in your death certificate, it'll have what previous industries or jobs you've had. In England, it doesn't. So when an ex-firefighter dies, potentially, it doesn't show that they were a firefighter in their past at all. And we want that to be in there, which is actively assisting in Scotland, because it shows and it says that someone has been a firefighter, retired, and then they've passed away at a later stage, because we think that it's highly important. You need to know the history of someone, because it's getting lost. That particular evidence is being lost, and we really want the English coroners to be able to put that onto the death certificate to say that this person was a firefighter, so whatever they've died of.
Thank you. And coming back to a living, am I right in thinking that firefighters, when they go to their GP, there's a code they can give to the GP that says they're a firefighter and they're treated as such?
Yes, there is. The FBU have published. There is a specific code. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's available on the FBU website, yeah.
Great, thank you. Assembly Member Clark.
Thank you for that. I'm coming on to your report that the FBU published earlier this year called Minimising Firefighters' Exposure to Toxic Fire Effluents. I guess it's really to both of you, or whoever would like to answer, but to what extent are the best practice principles for fire personnel in the report being implemented in London?
Thank you. Yeah, so I can start to answer this. The London Fire Brigade have taken up and are accepting the FBU report and its recommendations. We're pleased with that. There is a policy 1000 in London Fire Brigade, and we're pleased that that's being adhered to in London Fire Brigade, and we've currently just been in discussions with them and changed some of the words in there from should to must, so that firefighters must decontaminate and they must do things as opposed to a should. It is a good policy. We're pleased with it. But as with any policy, you can have a really good policy, but if the training and the knowledge is not there, it's no good at all. So we will be asking and emphasising to the LFB that more knowledge and understanding of that policy needs to be out there for crews and firefighters out on the stations.
Carl, did you want to add anything to that? You don't have to. Just to say, though, Gareth, when we were out in fire station earlier this week, I think what really struck me, though, is speaking with the firefighters was how much they understood and how much importance they placed on keeping themselves safe. So it had obviously been a sea change since some of them had joined the brigade. You know, even within that room, we had most of the firefighters had been going home with contaminated clothing. They had been, you know, they weren't afraid to have soiled faces and hands and that sort of thing. And they had made the changes for themselves as well as keeping their families safe, as well as the rest of the unit. You've actually sort of answered my next question, so I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Assembly Member Bakhari.
Thank you, Chair. The LFB's introduced the policy note 1005 contaminants in 2022 in conjunction with the FBU. How successful do you think this has been, and are you satisfied with the processes on adherence to these policies being effective?
Thank you very much. So I just wanted to come back and say a little bit more about the cleanliness and the new thinking of firefighters now. So I've been a firefighter for 27 years, so historically it was seen as a badge of honour to have the smokiest, dirtiest PPE, and you could tell when you walked on a fire station there'd been a fire because you could smell the smoke and the contaminants as it is now on PPE, and there is a much better knowledge and understanding. Councillor Clark is absolutely right. It is a big thing, and firefighters are much more aware of it. There's been massive campaigns carried out by the FBU, like clean, don't be dirty all the time. And there isn't a firefighter that I talk to that doesn't know someone that they work with, either on their watch or on their station, that has had a cancer, whether that be prostate cancer, bladder cancers, thyroid issues. Everyone now knows that it's a big problem. So I just wanted to add that in, and I'll hand over to Carl. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, on the subject of the PN 1000, the policy note 1000, which is the contamination policy, I think the LFB really deserve credit for working collaboratively with the FBU to produce what we consider to be one of the leading contamination policies in the UK. But it is just a start. As Gareth alluded to, there are changes that are going on within that policy all the time. So one of the most important changes recently is the word should to must. So it really puts that emphasis on changing culture within the London Fire Brigade. So now rather than, for example, you should not put your fire gloves in your helmet. It's now you must not put your fire gloves in your helmet because of the risk of contamination. And, you know, that is a real key driver to driving that cultural change because potentially, you know, people are going to be pulled up on it, which is only right and proper. But what there is a disconnect between the policy, what's written and what actually happens on fire stations, and that's for a number of reasons. I think one of the main reasons, which is a bugbear of ours, is the lack of effective training and education. Not to say there hasn't been training and education on it, but it's been a little bit hit and miss, we would say. You know, so when the policy first came out, there was a big drive, big training, big education piece, which worked well. But then that tails off as other things take priority, and there isn't that continuous CPD, that continuous professional development, don't always feel that the training cycle is completed adequately. So there's not a delivering of that training, a correct assessment of what people actually know, and then the audit trail, the review at the end to tie back into that training cycle. I think that is missing. That needs improving. There's also other more logistical issues that have prevented the policy from working as it should, and that includes things like PPE, difficulties obtaining PPE. So there's been a PPE shortage, the issues with the PPE contract, which has meant that in training, for example, where it could be recruit trainees, recruit firefighters, trainee firefighters who are undertaking a lot of what we would call carbonaceous hot wares, are reusing fire gear over and over again, which is obviously exposing them to contaminants and unacceptable. That's also happening on fire stations to a lesser effect, but it is happening. We've had anecdotal evidence of that. Also, the issue with appliances that are not readily available in London. That's potentially causing an increased risk to our firefighters when they're trying to implement a contamination policy, because there needs to be a relief consideration in that. That's really critical to the contamination policy, is having relief implementation. So if you've been exposed to contaminants, there is the shower within the hour within the policy that is really effective, because we know the sooner you get rid of contaminants, the safer you are, the risk has been reduced. But if you're stuck at an incident because you can't get reliefs, because there might be multiple jobs going on, that's going to create difficulty. So that's one of the reasons that we're arguing to ensure that we've got the correct number of fire appliances available at all times within London. And then there's the infrastructure itself, so the London Fire Brigade estate. We know that a lot of fire stations, a high number of fire stations, don't actually adhere to the policy note, because they do not keep, or they're unable to keep, because of the way the fire stations were created, dirty areas away from clean areas. So when your fire gear is taken off, it could be at a point where it's off-gassing. That off-gassing is now going from those dirty areas, from appliance bays, from kit rooms, potentially into rest areas, to food areas, to eating areas. And for us, that's unacceptable. Work is being done to try and resolve that, but again, the issue is a financial one, and it takes time. So in summary, I would say the policy is very good. We are engaging with the London Fire Brigade. There is a contaminants working group, which has a number of stakeholders in that group, us being one of them, where we're able to influence it, we're able to influence direction. That reports directly to our brigade safety committee, which then influences the risk register as well. So we feel we're adequately engaged, but the downside is that disconnect because of those problems.
I mean, I definitely saw the engagement, though, even to the point where there were posters that you have been working with the LFB, where you've got the green and amber and the red zones, and that's a joint project that you've done. And the challenges that we saw between one fire station that was a PFI modern designed station compared to one that is very old and Victorian, you know, beautiful building, but just not equipped for that kind of way of separating the contaminants and from those green areas so you're allowed to go in and out of. So it's good to see at least that there was that collaboration, but there are still challenges depending on buildings, as I think you've highlighted. But also you mentioned the training, and I thought that was really interesting because according to what we've heard, local levels are monitored by watch officers and station commanders, but it is very much dependent on those commanders and the prioritisation of how they would put this particular type of training. So how are you monitoring and how are you highlighting those differences between the different parts of the estate, and what are you doing to hold these particular parts of London or borough commanders even to account if they're not up to speed with the training and the prioritisation?
I'll answer that if that's okay, Chair. So what we engage at various different committees. So the FBU have got, as I mentioned, right at the top end, the brigade committee, which is minuted, public minutes, and it's really clear there. We've placed this as an item on that agenda. So we've placed the so contamination, for example, is a standing item on that agenda where we continue to list the areas of concern that we have. And also the estate, the infrastructure, the problems we've had, we've listed it there as well. So from there, we've asked for other meetings to discuss that specifically. We've asked for a project to be undertaken with some urgency to address those issues. Again, we're hitting those roadblocks because of finance. But also, within London, at the FBU and London Fire Brigade is split into 4 areas. So in each of those areas, we've got an area meeting which will look specifically at problems with specific stations, and they will be highlighted within those minutes and taken to the highest level. So the highest level there will be the deputy assistant commissioners, who are responsible for those areas. But also we have got the contaminants working group which meets, and we are very, very clear in the contaminants working group, and again this is an item on the agenda there, that we need to resolve these issues on these fire stations. So I think that there's a multi-pronged attack as to how we raise issues, how we address them, how we record them via the minutes, and we offer our solutions to it. So we offer our health and safety representatives to work with the local managers, with the station commanders, with the borough commanders, to look at the stations and look at the budgetary arrangements at those stations as well. And if the budget is simply not there to make the gold standard changes that we would like them to make, then we see if there's other potential control measures that we can introduce, specifically local arrangements to reduce those risks as far as possible. But
can I come in on the budget? I mean, I brought up funding as well when I was at one of the fire stations, and I think that is actually a key aspect to this. And when I did a mayor's question on this back in October, I asked for the total funds spent on the cleaning processes. I think it's Bristol that is the company that you use. And since 2020, since January 2020, £14 million have been spent, you know, on trying to make sure that that we are keeping everything clean. Is there a better way of managing the funds? Because I know that you're concerned about the funding. I know that the FBU are worried about, even in terms of thinking about where do we go forward? You know, are we going to have to potentially have strikes going forward because of the funding issues that the LFB are going through? And are you worried about that? Are you trying to work out how we can make this more cost effective for the best, for the best for the firefighters and for the LFB going forward?
So I can come in on that one. So yes, in short, we are extremely worried about the funding of the London Fire Brigade across the next 2-3 years. So the PPE contract is up for renewal. It was agreed probably about, I think it's about 10 years ago now, and we didn't know as much then as we know now. So we are using more PPE, we are getting more washes of PPE. We've asked for additional PPE, for example, the hood that goes underneath the helmet and protects your head and neck and face. We've asked for particulate filtering hoods in the future, and we are part of the working group looking at new PPE and new numbers of PPE. We're going to need more PPE. It's going to cost more, absolutely, because it's being cleaned more. We want it cleaned more. But the funding across the LFB is an absolute massive issue for us, whether it's firefighters unavailable because there's no money for more firefighters, there's no money for overtime to cover shortfalls when firefighters are training on their duty days, and the number of appliances off the run, which is unavailable in our world, that Carl alluded to earlier. So if there's big incidents and you haven't got enough or spare appliances around London, it's starting to cause problems, and we're constantly getting on at the London Fire Brigade that we want all fire appliances on the run and all of them to be available. So the finance is a massive problem at the moment for the London Fire Brigade moving forward, and we urge the Mayor and central government really to step up, because there's been no additional funding since the recommendations from the Grenfell Tower inquiry, from the HMI Inspectorate. There's been no additional funding. The Mayor has found additional funding, but no additional funding from central government, which is what's needed. And that's showing in the projects that need to be carried out on fire stations. So if you look at some of the fire stations, we call them the old Middlesex fire stations across the northwest area of London, they need a lot of work to make them compliant to the brigade policy, which is costing a lot of money, and it needs massive investment. And that's what London Fire Brigade needs. If you compare London Fire Brigade, which you have to Hong Kong, Tokyo, Paris, places like that, we are massively under-resourced compared to New York and other fire and rescue services.
I mean, I did ask that question. I mean, we found out that there are far less firefighters in London compared to some of the other major cities in the world, which is pretty shocking, really. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just pick up on the architecture of the building, because that came through in both of the visits, that if it's a newer building, then it can literally be designed to go from the amber zone to the green zone. Whereas when we went to an older fire station, they talked about how much work they're doing to change people's behaviours, but the building is almost working against you. If we're retrofitting fire stations, presumably that's a brilliant opportunity to go, actually, how can we look at how can we change the building to make it work for your policy? Are those discussions actively happening? And then the second thing, I don't know if this is too tenuous, but I don't think it is. Presumably if people are getting contaminated, even on the smaller scale, that's affecting people in terms of their health, in terms of the short term as well, and that's, could be causing sickness, which is ultimately a cost to the fire brigade, as opposed to making sure decontamination happens properly and people are healthy.
Yeah, I'll take that one, Chair, if that's okay. So, first off, the works on fire stations, our opinion, to be brutally honest, is that projects are happening in silos. That's how it's been reported to us. So one team will be responsible for privacy for all for example, and they will go down and ensure that the works are completed for that project, which is individual rooms and such like. And this, so looking at the contaminants works that need to be done, will be done in a completely different silo, and very often they come into conflict with some of the work they need to do. And in all honesty, I feel that it could be managed better on that side. That's not to say that we're not engaged with. We are, and our opinion is listened to and valued in the most part. But there are a lot of logistical problems with buildings which we obviously understand and respect. But you know, with a little bit more foresight and planning, I think they could be resolved. So that's that question, Chair. The next one regarding the cost. So the FBU have done some costing on a particular firefighter who suffered with cancer, and it was calculated that through sick pay and NHS treatment for a cancer that we would consider to be linked to their role as a firefighter, it cost in excess of £500,000 for that one individual. Now, if we consider how, if we had some preventative work in place, and we consider how much we could achieve with 500,000 in regards to prevention, I think it really speaks for itself, and that's literally one firefighter. So we do see that as being an investment back into not only our people, which is obviously the most important aspect here, but also within the fire service itself.
Yeah, that's really stark, and yeah, obviously health and well-being is the first place here, but if we're talking economics as well, it doesn't make any sense to cut corners. Just the last question from me, which is much more specific, but there's a blue mat that gets put down for the decontamination, which we were told is the focus point where people keep coming back to. But I heard from a couple of firefighters that there's not proper mats in terms of they can blow away in the wind, or it can be quite difficult and chaotic sometimes. Do you know if there's any work being done to look at that? That feels fairly fixable. So I realise it's very niche.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So I know of the mat that you're talking about, and no, I'm not aware of anything at the moment. I will endeavour to chase that up with the LFP and see if there's any look forward thinking about changing them to something better.
Perfect, and I can ask them in an hour's time as well. Assembly Member Cooper. Sorry, I'm wrong. Assembly Member Hall. Sorry, Leonie.
It's okay. No worries. Morning, gentlemen. Going back to something Assemblymember Bakari said, I would have thought that the onus really is also on the watch and station managers to make sure that things are done properly when they get back to base, because that makes sense. I don't know if you ever watched the budget meetings, which we had yesterday on the fire brigade. You'll note I did say that perhaps some of these very old buildings would be better off with the land sold and a more modern thing like Harold Hill put in place. To accommodate all that. One of the things you brought up earlier was monitoring retired firefighters. How long would they have had to have worked with the fire brigade in order to be picked up on that? Because if you've got somebody that's worked for, say, 6 months with the brigade, you can't then, there's just not enough money in anything, let alone doing that. So if you've, like you have, Gareth, if you've been there man and boy and all the rest of it, then I get that. But at what point would you have a cut-off? Because you can't possibly monitor everybody that works for the fire brigade. I mean, I know in the past, everybody was there for a lifetime, as it were, but things are changing in the workplace. So how long would you put on that?
So I think that's a very fair question. The way we look at that situation is the way we look at contaminants as a whole, and how we would like people to look at contaminants, as in the same way as they look at asbestos. So if we think of the changes that have been made over the years because of the awareness of the hazards, the dangers and risks associated with asbestos, we know that one exposure to asbestos can cause cancer in later life. And we feel that science points to the same situation with contaminants. So I mentioned earlier about trainee firefighter training. Just the trainee firefighter training, it requires them to undertake a huge amount of carbonaceous wears. And those wears in themselves are what we would consider to be enough exposure to cause problems with cancer in later life. And we feel that warrants, the same way as any exposure to asbestos would warrant medical observation in the future. We feel the same should be for any firefighter that's served, regardless of the length of time. Although we do acknowledge the more exposure you have, obviously the greater the risk.
So if you had to put a limit on it, or are you saying it doesn't matter, work for the fire brigade 5 minutes and we owe you? Because the thing is, there's no absolute proof, and perhaps they'll get it, that this contaminant caused whatever, bladder cancer. I read in the briefing that is the biggest one, as you can see. But it could be then that a person could work for the brigade for, say, 6 months and then go off and do a different profession, a job, whatever, and be faced with the same contaminants. So there's no proof there. My point being, there isn't, endless amounts of money, and at some point you've got to have a cut-off, because if not, you're looking at the sorts of money that are just, fairy tales. They're never going to be in place. Do you see what I mean? Until you say it is definitely this contaminant that is only ever found from a firefighter, then linking it back, and later we're coming to compensation, so we won't go into that now, and we're going into PPP later. But, I mean, what do you think would be a fair time to look at something you could aim for? I mean, how much money would you talk about the brigade putting money aside for this, and you would want money there. How much money have you worked out that the fire brigade needs to put aside for this? And what would that criteria be?
So, from our point of view, we've already mentioned about the research that's required. Yeah, so part of that research, as mentioned earlier, really is monitoring firefighters longitudinally, so making sure that you're monitoring who.
Yeah, no, I get that. My point being, everybody from the day one that they start and then all the way through into retirement, or from when they've worked for the brigade for a couple of years or for a decade, and how much money have you estimated that will cost? Because we all say, well, the fire brigade can't afford it, but can't afford what? How much? How much money are you looking at that the fire brigade would have to find? We all know it's unlikely they can, but what should they be aiming at?
So putting the compensation aside, so you said put that to one side, right, without talking about compensation itself, because compensation's.
We're coming to that later.
Great,
so,
we'll come to that later.
Okay,
that's great.
Park that and look at the other bits.
If you've got cancer, then the compensation it isn't. You wouldn't want to get cancer to get the compensation.
No, 100%. I'm with you completely. I'm just, if you go for an ask to the commissioner, what sort of funding are you looking for then? So
again, I'm not the right person to ask about funding. I can look at things from a moral and legal perspective. I think the funding itself is potentially levelled up by the savings you would make for early intervention of cancer monitoring. So what we're talking about is firefighters who have left the job, for example, or who are within the job, or are being health monitored. So if their health is being monitored, if their blood is being tested.
No, I completely understand. But if you're asking for something, which it seemed to me for the beginning of the meeting, that you were asking for something and you're coming across a brick wall with the money, you mentioned it, Gareth, that there isn't money. How much money are you looking for?
So, to go back to what Carl said earlier, if you start in the fire service, you do a course, and part of that course is you have 2 weeks of continuous breathing apparatus training.
Yeah.
So if anyone does that, that's the exposure. We don't know how much they get exposed, but we know they are exposed. So they can do that, and as far as we're concerned, if they've done that and then they leave the fire and rescue service, they should still be monitored. That's a must. It's a given. It has to be, because you can, as Carl said, you can have one fibre of asbestos that gets in your lung with a fishhook fibre, and that's it. You've got cancer. So as far as we're concerned, you do that training to be a firefighter. Once you've done that, that is it.
Okay. So
now the finances, though, I mean, we don't know. We don't know how much it's going to cost. All we do know is how much it has cost for a firefighter that has been ill with cancer, and that was a firefighter that's not a London firefighter, we don't believe, and that was £500,000 at a cost to the employer. So what we're saying is that it would work out as less if the fire and rescue services, including London Fire Brigade, carry out monitoring and invest into that would have a better effect on their finances. We know there's a broad, as I alluded to, there is a broad funding deficiency at the moment, which is all taken into account. And as I said, the central government have not given any more money to the London Fire Brigade since the Grenfell Tower inquiry, since the HMI recommendations. The LFB want to spend money on this, but they're constrained. We want fire engines available, but they're constrained by finances. So to ask us exactly how much it's going to cost to carry this out, I mean, we'd have to speak to the LFB property holders, their portfolio, and how much it's costing to change fire stations, how much the PPE contract is going to cost to increase, to give us the more regular changes of PPE. There's a lot to take into account, which we haven't done.
Okay. It would just be helpful to have a figure there. I mean, if you just look at then, you're actually, the DECON campaign asks for annual health monitoring and exposure recording. So that's a specific ask. How much would that then cost if it's done in London?
There again, we'd have to seek that from the London Fire Brigade, how much that would cost from them.
Okay.
So yeah, it's annual screening of bloods, lung function, skins, and so on like that.
Can you see my point? In a time where finances are difficult, if you've got an ask, and I can see why you're asking it. You have got to have some idea of the cost of what you're asking for, because then there's something to aim for or to specifically ask for. To ask for an open-ended thing like this, especially if you're going back to the very beginning of anybody training, and especially as people are not keeping their jobs as long as they used to in days gone by when you went into a job and you stayed there. People don't do that anymore. You're looking at a vast amount of people that would have to be monitored, and there's no ballpark figure for costing. So I just think it would be an idea going forward. I'll leave it at here because you don't have costings, which fair enough. It's just something that if you ask for something, you need to know the cost of that something.
I think it's a valid point, and I think it's work that the central government would probably need to do per head, per fire and rescue service. So if I'm in Essex Fire and Rescue with a lesser number of staff, then they will need less funding to carry this out than the LFB. So I think it's something that central government should be able to pick up, or even if it's each individual fire and rescue service, work it out per head how much it's going to cost. But there's a lot of different variables to be taken in, and we'd be happy to discuss that with them.
But it's an open-ended financial cost that people won't agree to unless they have an amount that they can put into their books or that they can assume it might cost.
Well, we'd be happy to have discussions with the LFB on what they propose or what they think it would cost, and then we'd know more. We'd happily do that.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Can I just check, and what I'm understanding from you there, though, that there shouldn't be the London or a fire rescue service. There should be about government, otherwise things just get siloed. And some could be going to a fire brigade, but not Essex, or going to Manchester. So it's about across the board. And I suppose my second part of that question really heard the Commissioner yesterday when he was talking about the fire brigade ultimately being about our national security, both in terms of marauding terrorist attacks, wildfires, floods, that's before we even get to house fires, people stuck in lift shafts, like all the different things that firefighters are doing. It seems kind of outrageous that the government don't see this as a statutory duty to go, actually, we need to fund the people who are keeping so many of us safe. It was partly a question.
So absolutely, we are actively lobbying central government in regard to flood being a statutory duty. The FBU have been doing that as a lobbying subject for many years now. We do believe it should be, because we go to floods, we go to persons in water, but there's no specific funding for it. So absolutely, we'll do that. And centrally, I know that our General Secretary, Steve Wright, is meeting regularly with the Fire Minister at the moment in regard to funding across the services, but I'm not aware of London actually having its full amount being revealed thus far.
Thank you. Assembly Member Buck-Harry.
Thank you. Now, there have been some different views about the National Firefighter Cancer Registry that we've been hearing as a committee, and I even raised the issue about health screening with some of the firefighters that we met. And there was one who actually said, well, and we've had this from our other committee as well, that there is concerns about the fact that there isn't any good screening test that is provided by the NHS currently at the moment. So how do you see this working and being managed? I mean, it's even now when I asked at the fire station about just the way firefighters were self-monitoring, it's pretty poor. You know, the fact that none of them actually had a health check with a GP themselves. That worried me a little bit as well. So how do you envisage how that's going to be managed?
Yeah, so it's something that concerns us, certainly, because we've, as Gareth mentioned earlier, there is a code that we urge firefighters to give to their GPs to say that they're serving firefighters and therefore they're increased risk at certain illnesses and diseases and that, but we're hearing reports coming back from the GPs that we don't know what this code is, or yeah, it's of little interest to us, which is a concern. How it should be managed? Well, I think there's two countries or areas that are far supersede, far ahead of us in regards to dealing with firefighter cancer and diseases, and that is the US. Who have a model already, and we would urge, we support that model and the way it operates. It's been absolutely essential for research and for prevention and to demonstrate that occupational causation for cancer. And also the Scandinavian model as well, which has been highly praised and is also relevant, and they have their own cancer registries. It's all linked to recognising firefighting as cancer being a occupational hazard for firefighting. And I think, you know, it's we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to look at those areas, those countries, and look at those models and see how they would fit for us.
Thanks. That really is Assembly Member Cooper.
Sorry, could I just come in add one bit to that, Chair? Is that all right? So Carl just sort of touched on it, but we are seeking presumptive legislation is what we want for firefighters. So the presumptive legislation would mean that firefighting as an occupation would be presumed that you are likely to get cancer, as opposed to at the moment it's not, and you have to fight to say that you've got cancer from your work, where there's quite a few other countries where it is presumptive now and it's in place, but the UK it's not as yet. So that is something that we really want and we're pushing for massively.
Assembly Member Cooper.
Thank you. It feels traditional to ask about PPE, because I think I must have asked you about PPE a few times in the past, Gareth. There's this contract in place with Bristol MSA, and you've already alluded to some thoughts about PPE and contamination and cleaning, but I just wondered if you could unpack a bit whether or not you feel that the way the contract is operating is adequate and what improvements may or may not be needed. And I'm very happy for either one or both of you to come in.
Thank you. So, yeah, as I said earlier, the PPE contract was agreed some years ago and it's coming to its end now, and the process has started, and the LFB are part of the collaborative process with the NFCC looking at new PPE and how much is required, so that there will be a higher level and number requirement sets of PPE in London. I'm not too sure exactly what it is at the moment. I think it's 2.4 sets of PPE per firefighter, and it rolls around and moves about. You don't actually get 2 sets of PPE.
I'm very interested in what 0.4 of a PPE might look
yeah,
like. But
exactly.
Was it one shoe and one half a trouser leg?
Yeah, it could be. Half a sleeve. So it is without doubt that we're going to need more sets of PPE, because there has been shortages in the summer where there's lots of fires in the outside, or there's big incidents, for example, where a lot of PPE is used. Yes, MSA have bought the Bristol contract now, and they've got the site at Rainham where they wash all the PPE. It is turning over a little bit better, but we're not as good as we want. We still have situations where there's a lack of PPE, where firefighters are attending breathing apparatus courses, for example. They haven't got enough smoke hoods or gloves and stuff like that sometimes. But training is the biggest issue, that MSA are unable to supply adequate sets of PPE for training courses. But all this is known now, and it will be put into the new contract when it comes into fruition. But it's an ongoing issue, because we know now so much more than we did then when this contract was initially. And it's good that this PPE is a lighter colour, gold, as opposed to the one before was a darker sort of dark blue, black. So you can see visible contaminants as well as the unknown ones as well. So the knowledge is greater, so we're using more PPE.
Right. So, but you're talking about a problem with training. So obviously a lot of people going on a training course at the same time, and they're using the PPE as part of the training, and then it all needs to go off to be clean after use, and that is then creating a depletion of PPE after the training, or people are going on training and they don't have the PPE while they're on the training, or both?
So it's a mixture of both. So sometimes the contract is that PPE will be supplied for you when you attend the training venue. So breathing apparatus training venues, one in Park Royal, one at Beckton. So the PPE is there for when you arrive to do your course. Sometimes MSA can't get enough there, and they will ask firefighters to take it from their station with them to complete the course. Post the course, they leave it there and it's taken away for cleaning. So if there are a lot of fires ongoing, specifically in the summer when we was getting a lot of wildfires, it can interact and there can be a shortage overall. But I mean, if you haven't got enough PPE when you get there, you don't do the course. It's as simple as that. You must. It's included in the name, personal protective equipment. It's personal to you.
So you would say that the shortcomings are more to do with the fact that the contract is such an old contract, rather than necessarily the LFB having shortcomings in its policies around PPE. It's that way around?
Yeah, it is. So the LFB policy states, PM 1000, that you change your PPE. But yes, the agreement they've got with MSA is old. There has been some amendments put to it, and this extra kit has been procured at a cost in addition to the cost of the contract. So the new contract that they're looking to complete within the next sort of 18 months will have to have more PPE because of the turnover that we've got, because of what we know from the contaminants policies.
Right. And, well, that was going to be my next question. So we're expecting that the negotiation of the new contract to be concluded during the next 18 months, or 18 months is like the last end date by which we're anticipating. Might it be concluded sooner?
So there's trials are taking place in Scotland in January for all the fire and rescue services that are part of the NFCC collaboration. So London are going, I shall be going, I'm not too sure whether Carl will be attending. And that's for whoever wants to apply to supply the kit, part of the procurement process. So the spec has gone out to suppliers, and now then they will supply what they can for the trials in January. And then I believe we're looking at the end of next year, early part of the year after, for it to become available. Now, there's lots of things that need to be taken into account, which is good. I'm really pleased with what the LFB are saying. So separate wildfire PPE, which is a lot lighter than the thick padded PPE that you see at the moment. So that padded thick PPE is for compartment fires, which is when it's needed. So if there's only 2 of you going into that compartment fire, the rest of the crew, you don't need that thickness and high level of protection. So there's different options to have, different ways of having the PPE instead of just one set of PPE that does everything. You can have a layered approach. So if you're going to a shut-in lift or a car crash in RTC, you have one level of protection, but if you are actually going into a carbonaceous fire, then you need the highest level, then you put more on. So there's all different options being looked at the moment.
Okay, I can understand why hence the lead-in time that you referred to. Did you want to come in as well, Carl, on any of those?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, if I may, just to elaborate really on a couple of points there. One of them is regarding what we would like to see in the PPE, which Gareth's already alluded to, but the particulate blockers, so particularly with the flash hoods, the fire hoods, so the ability to block out those carcinogens altogether. So we'd really like, and they are expensive, but they're available. So we would like that costed and considered. And also, I think there needs to be further research regarding the cleaning of the PPE. So there is research in other countries which demonstrates that 15% of hydrocarbons, which a particular type of hydrocarbon which is left on the PPE after cleaning, still poses a carcinogenic risk. So we would like to look at research to see how we can reduce that further. And finally was the issue regarding workwear, so what you wear underneath your PPE. We've already mentioned about the concerns that firefighters have had. I think you may have had this talk when you went to speak to firefighters at stations, how they were concerned about going home to their family and taking those carcinogens back to their family. And we would like to see things like washing machines on fire stations. So we've got the ability to wash workwear as well, so we can ensure that there's a process in place so that when you go home entirely clean and free from any of these chemicals. That's all to add. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the workwear, because there's been quite a lot of evidence showing that people who've worked with asbestos have then taken it home, and family members who've never been anywhere near the source of the asbestos have developed asbestosis because they've been washing the clothes. So definitely washing is a good thing. Just on the issue of compensation, which you sort of touched on, and then Assemblymember Hall sort of moved away from, because we have got a couple of questions that I'm going to ask about it. What should the LFB be doing to support FBU calls for compensation for firefighters? What would you like to see?
So we feel that the LFB can contribute quite a lot to this, because they can keep full accessible exposure records. So all our firefighters obviously go through occupational health, have regular monitoring through occupational health, but we can add to that the evidence, you like, to say what fires they've been at and how many they've attended over a period of time. And that would really assist with the research, and also firefighters being able to make future claims. I think they can also publicly back the FBU and lobby the Mayor and yourselves really to ask for that compensation be paid. That's it really. I think there is, the presumptive legislation is the biggest hurdle that we need to overcome, as Gareth's mentioned already, and that is a national campaign. But again, that can be supported by the LFB to support us to agree to acknowledge the evidence that is there and take on the due diligence as an employer and the duty of care.
So in terms of specific cancers, and I think the ones that you've specifically mentioned today have been bladder cancer, prostate cancer and thyroid cancer, and there may be others, but those are the ones that I've specifically noticed. Do you think it would be helpful for the LFB to formally recognise those as occupational cancers and possibly others in its internal policies, even if nationally the industrial injuries disablement benefit does not at the moment do so?
Absolutely. We do feel they should, and we feel there should be backdated payments for firefighters and the families that have been affected.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Can I just understand, there was a recommendation around having another space at a fire station where people were able to change, and this was considered impractical, just to see if that's the understanding of the FBU as well. Sorry, incidents in particular.
We're not entirely sure what that is, but as I mentioned previously, because we have got a series of stations. We've got Middlesex stations, as they're known, when they were part of that service. They're built in a specific way, and they do pose a number of problems. But every station has got its own challenges. So that may be a particular station that's got those issues. So we find, for example, as I mentioned, the local health and safety reps go to the station and they look at specifically what could be changed at that station or what can be done to reduce the risk as far as practicable. I think that may be one of those situations where you have a rest area that is potentially exposed to off-gassing, that simple building works may not solve, because there needs to be access to the appliance bay, to the pole house, to things like that. So without knowing the specific station, I can't answer that question in full, unfortunately, Chair.
No problem at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just before we break, I do want to welcome Year 6 students from Bramfield Primary School at Havering. Hey, guys. These guys are from the Fire Brigade Union, and we're going to be talking very soon to representatives from the London Fire Brigade. But for here, we're going to take a 5-minute break. So thank you very much both for your contributions this morning, and I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Welcome back to the Fire Committee. We now continue our discussion into the risk of firefighters' exposure to contaminants and its impact on their health and well-being. I'd like to welcome our guests from the London Fire Brigade to the Chamber this morning. Spencer Sutcliffe, who is the Deputy Commissioner and Operational Director for Prevention, Protection and Policy at the London Fire Brigade. Dr Adrian Bevan, who is the Assistant Director of Health and Safety at the London Fire Brigade, and Andy Pennock, the Assistant Commissioner of Fire Stations and Central Operations, London Fire Brigade. Welcome to you all. Deputy Commissioner, if I can begin with you, are there any risk factors specific to London that heighten the likely exposure to fire contaminants?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the way we view London is it's naturally very similar to any other large metropolitan area within the UK and globally. I think what separates London from other cities is certainly within the UK, is just the sheer size of it, particularly the dense built environment. I think we have potentially a confluence of risks, particularly around the gig economy, which we have a huge economy. We know that the gig economy uses a lot of lithium-ion battery vehicles, whether that's
Spencer, sorry to interrupt. Could you bring the microphone slightly closer?
A little nearer.
Yeah, please. That'd be great.
So yes, as I was explaining, I think London potentially has a confluence of risks around the dense built environment plus the gig economy, and we know the concerning increase in risk around lithium battery fires. And I think we also need to understand the better context within the UK, because the UK also differs somewhat in around some of our firefighting techniques, the use of our breathing apparatus, potentially the demographics of our firefighters and the lifestyle choices. So although I think there's certainly some useful comparables to other global cities, the UK and London will always be specific in its nature to some extent.
Thank you. And how concerned are you about the use of chemical flame retardants in building and furniture stock in relation to exposure to fire contaminants?
Yes, I think we're very concerned. Obviously, you've just spoken to our colleagues in the FBU, and we share the concerns of the committee as well. Again, I don't think London necessarily differs greatly from other cities, but that increased usage, certainly dating back to the 60s and 70s, around fire retardants in furnishings, and what was referred to earlier around the modern methods of construction, the greater use of chemicals and plastics, has certainly changed the built environment and some of the risk kind of dynamics in London. So we are naturally concerned, yes.
Thank you. This might be a question for anyone who wants to take it. It might still be you, Deputy Commissioner. But what assessment has LFB made of scale and sources of PFAS exposure?
I think at this moment I will bring in Dr. Bevan. So just for the, it might be an obvious point, but Adrian's going to hopefully pick up any particular technical health matters, and Andy is responsible for fire stations, so certainly areas around training and culture. But I'll refer this to Adrian if I can, please.
Thank you. Dr. Bevan.
Morning. Thank you, Chair. So in relation to PFAS exposure monitoring, London Fire Brigade hasn't done anything specifically. There isn't a fire rescue service in the UK that has done anything specifically yet. There have been conversations about whether it would be good to do some exposure monitoring, so whether that would be PFAS or whether that would be polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons or other types of contaminants. So at the moment we're kind of reliant on the global research, so a lot of work has been done in this area, in the US for example. So I think we've got a good appreciation of the types of PFAS exposure that firefighters are more likely to get and the sources of those.
And how would that research happen? Would the department just decide we're going to get involved with this now?
PFAS exposure monitoring is quite difficult. So it's slightly easier if you use a urine-based test. It's very difficult if you use blood-based tests. It's difficult because of point of use and the time that you do it. So quite often you need to mobilise a clinical team to an area that firefighters can get access to quickly. So it's quite difficult to do. It might be something that we could do through our existing occupational health contract, but it's not something that is factored into that at the moment. I think it would be something that nationally we would look at through the NFCC Contaminants Working Group.
Thank you. And in related question, Launders Lane, where obviously a fire is continually burning or often continually burning, has now been designated as a contaminated land site. Is there opportunities there to collect data and to look at risks from a Launders Lane site?
Yes, so we have reviewed the reports that were commissioned by the local authority in relation to the Launders Lane site. So they did air monitoring over a extended period. They released a number of reports into the public arena about a month ago. I think that is one of the factors that has led to Launders Lane being designated a whatever it's been designated as, an environmental issue. I'm not sure what specifically London Fire Brigade can do at the Launders Lane site outside of operational response, but we are in discussions with the local management there about what we might do at the local fire station in Wellington in terms of some specific air monitoring, which I should be able to do through my team.
Thank you. Deputy Commissioner, I'm hearing here loud and clear that this is complicated and it requires clinical teams. How much of a priority is this for the Fire Brigade?
Thank you, Chair. I think, well, it is a priority, and we've done huge kind of demonstrable work since we became had further clarity around the concerns to the health and well-being of our staff. Naturally, if we don't have healthy firefighters, we can't deliver the service that we need to for London. So I think since 2019, which is our first kind of real communication strategy around contaminants, obviously we've introduced Policy Note 1000, in addition to some really kind of robust policies and guidance in relation to wearing our respiratory protection equipment, notably our breathing apparatus, our checks around ensuring that PPE is correctly fitting, and a number of awareness campaigns, and we certainly contribute to a number of key areas of research that will probably come up through discussion. So I think we've got, I would like to say we've got demonstrable evidence that we're taking the situation incredibly seriously. There's an acceptance that there's more research required. The committee obviously touched upon some areas where I think we can improve around awareness and knowledge of our staff, which I think is absolutely critical in this area, potential improvements around our estate and how we use that. So we absolutely are taking it with the utmost seriousness. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Doctor, if I can come back to you, what research has been commissioned or carried out into contaminant exposure?
Oh yeah, thank you. So starting with London specifically, so London has partnered with Imperial College on a study called the Grenfell Firefighter Study. The Grenfell Firefighter Study has two components. So firstly and principally, that study was about the cardiorespiratory health effect of Grenfell as an incident and career exposure as a firefighter to smoke, fire contaminants. And then there's a second component where Imperial College partnered with the University of Cambridge to do a cancer biomarker study. The cancer biomarker study has been published. The cardiorespiratory health effects publish is being finalised, and I think we'll be going to peer review soon. The general outcome of the cancer biomarker study, that was an exploratory study. They only had enough money to do 260 blood samples. It's not a very big size sample. It was reassuring. 11 variants for markers of cancer were found in the 261 blood tests that were examined. They were all different cancer biomarkers that were found. But in the UK generally, more research needs to be done with much larger sample sizes in order really to be confident in the findings. And then you've got a range of studies that have been done by the University of Central Lancashire. So one of those, the London Fire Brigade facilitated access to 270 firefighters so that they could take blood tests, that those blood tests are still being analysed. So the idea there is to compare firefighter blood tests with members of the general public. They also did about 350 members of the general public. I think they're finalising their results now. I'm not quite sure when that data will be published. And then UCLan obviously have published a range of other research in the area. Outside of that, there isn't much that's UK specific. So that's one of the gaping holes at the minute, is we need probably quite significantly more and quite significantly larger studies in the UK to really be confident about what are the risks, where would we prioritise our resources, in terms of what actions need to be taken.
Thank you. And Deputy Commissioner, would the LFB back a firefighter cancer survey, either London or UK level, and what role would the LFB be prepared to play in its development or implementation?
Well, currently the FBU hold the register, which we actively support and encourage our staff to engage with. So I see no reason why, if there's the further data and further survey information to gather, that we wouldn't support that going forward. Absolutely. Thank you.
Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you. I just want to come back on something the chairman was talking about. It's Launders Lane in Havering. It's a dreadful sight. I mean, it's awful that the fire brigade are called there, and so the fire brigade are inhaling. But all those residents around there are living with that the whole time. Now, I know the brigade has got, in some cases, greater powers than the police of shutting places down, etc. Is there nothing that you can do to insist that somewhere, whether it's the government, whether it's that council or anybody else, actually gets a grip of this Launders Lane? Because it can't carry on. Because if we're saying that firefighters are inhaling these things and it could be dangerous, quite rightfully, we're absolutely appalled by that, and so we should be, and it needs to be looked into. But residents all around Launders Lane are inhaling that every single day. Is there absolutely no powers you've got to make sure that this is dealt with?
Yeah, thank you, Assembly Member Hall. So I've attended Launders Lane myself personally, I think 3 times over the last 18 months with both and twice with our current and our previous Deputy Mayor. So, of course, we're very concerned about the impact on the health of our firefighters, the health on local residents, and sometimes the two things are, of course, the same. We have firefighters living locally in the area. Our focus is both working in partnership with the local authority and other concerned stakeholders, and also the safety of our staff. And we have some robust measures in place regarding the response to Launders Lane to keep our staff safe, and we're working constantly to review those tactics. I think at the moment we're doing everything we can within our powers to influence that situation, and like I say, continue to work with stakeholders, whether that's the Environment Agency, the local authority or others, to try and improve that situation.
Well, it's really got to be dealt with. We've got children breathing that air with their developing lungs. I mean, that should appall all of us.
Yes.
So I do hope that either you're able to get the council to do something or the government, but it can't carry on, because you may visit it, other people are living right inside it. So yeah. I would appreciate if you could really push on that from your position. Thank you.
No, thank you. We'll stay fully involved.
Thanks. I've been reminded we've got school children in from Havering, but we're just making sure you're all safe, and you are indeed safe. Assembly Member Bakari.
Thank you. I've actually been to Launders Lane. You can smell it as soon as you arrive in the area. So I know that a lot of the residents there are very concerned. I mean, the fact that they even reached out to me as well, you know, that it's a massive concern. So I'm glad that you're picking this up as well in terms of pushing for pressure to. I think it's the local council personally that needs to get going with this. Actually, it's been going on for 20 years. Quite a long time. I want to talk about budget pressures. I mentioned this earlier in the other panel, and I was worried about the impact that the budget pressures would have on the long-term improvements and the management of contaminants, as well as PPE provision. What are you doing to ensure that, despite budget pressures, there will still be a prioritisation when it comes to training and monitoring, and also making sure that there is a consistent approach across the estate?
Yes, thank you, Assembly Member Bakari. So I think, first of all, and I won't repeat myself, but I think we've done an awful lot of work within the. Well, first of all, I recognise, of course, we've got some budgetary strain right across the public sector, and of course within the fire brigade. I think within those constraints, we've done some real credible work, whether that's the policy, the training and awareness, and the improvements also. I know the FBU colleagues spoke about the issues that we have had, which we do accept around the provision of PPE within the current contract, but we've also levered that contract to be the best we can at this moment in time. For example, we didn't used to provide PPE at training venues. In the last 18 or 24 months or so, we've now done that in response to concerns raised by our staff and the FBU. So we have, despite the financial constraints or kind of strains that we operate in, we have continued to improve in that area. The PPE contract and the work that we're doing around the wider NFCC procurement process will potentially involve further fundings, and naturally we'll welcome further support in that. That's not costed at the moment, and naturally we're looking for the most competitive contract that we can that will bring us those improvements that we need. But as it stands at the moment, although we naturally welcome funds, whether that's improvements to the estates, whether that's research and potentially increased costs around the PPE, we haven't got any costings right now. The important bit, I think, right now is to make sure our staff are fully aware and are fully able to comply with the policies that we have in place that we believe are robust.
Yeah, the FBU were talking about the fact that they were monitoring borough commanders as well. You're doing that as well. You're having that same approach to make sure you're checking, you're making sure that you're holding them to account. If you see a gap, you call it out.
Yeah, and there's two really important bits of work that are coming to fruition now. One was our level 2 assurance, as we call it, by our business assurance team that's literally just reported in the last few days. So they've done an assurance check on station against policies. And right now, due to report in the new year, we've been doing an assurance check on the incident ground led by our operational review team. So once we have the results, and we've got some early indications, and I will say first and foremost, I absolutely commend our staff and our FBU colleagues in that kind of cultural change that we've been on in the last few years. We've still got some areas where I think compliance is less so. I really welcome your attendance at the 2 fire stations. I think you probably saw 2 really good examples of fully engaged staff, and credit to them. That cultural change has been significant. I think it doesn't stop. We don't suddenly think, oh yeah, we've done this, we've ticked it off. We do need to continually go around the circle and make sure that staff are fully aware of what they need to do to keep themselves safe. I know we give full training to our trainees at training school before they arrive at a station, which I think really important to embed that in from kind of day one. So yes, more to do, but I think right at the moment, the kind of financial ask is not firmed up yet, but we'll see how we go.
And when I mentioned the £14 million that are being spent on the Bristol laundry service, I mean, it sounds a lot, doesn't it? Is there a way that the LFB have been thinking about reducing costs, perhaps even doing an in-house service that could really benefit making sure that you have got this approach in the long term? Because £14 million on another company that you're spending money on to do the laundry service, which is incredibly important, it sounds like a steep approach for you if you're going to go forward and budget concerns are such an issue for you.
Yeah, so I think that PPE contract, which my understanding is something around 6 years old now. I think it was a 5-year original contract, and we've extended it for a year, deliberately so to allow this NFCC kind of UK-wide procurement process to go into place. And come January, we're doing moderation with potential interested parties, and then we're doing the testing week commencing the 26th of January. So shortly after that, we'll have a really clear understanding what's available, what kind of ensemble of PPE is available that's going to be compliant and give us the improvements we all seek. And then we'll see through that procurement process what is the most effective and economical solution. And I don't believe we've ruled anything else. At the moment, we have a kind of full service arrangement, as you know, where it's provided and taken away and cleaned and supplied back. We'll certainly look at whether there's the option of purchasing ourselves. I mean, that always comes with pros and cons, doesn't it, as you kind of scale up the supply chain. So we will look at that. And I wouldn't like to say now whether we've got a particular favoured option at this point. It's probably commercially not something we'd want to declare either. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblymember Cooper.
Thank you. Yes, on the topic of PPE, you previously told us that there was a backlog in providing PPE which had been caused by issues with the contract for cleaning, and that was going on during June and July of this year, which, as far as I recall, coincides with the time when we had wildfires, apart from anything else going on. Are you satisfied that the issues related to those backlogs, in the short term at least, have been dealt with, notwithstanding further contract negotiations?
Yeah, if I can bring in Assistant Commissioner Pennick and he can talk through some of the issues we've had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank you, Assemblymember Cooper. So you're absolutely right. Over the summer, there were supply chain issues relating to provision of PPE for London Fire Brigade, and it was kind of multifaceted, the reasons for it. So MSA Bristol are a major supplier of PPE nationally within the UK Fire Service, and over the summer period, we saw some of the busiest periods for wildfires, as you say, as well as our kind of more business as usual operational response. And that coincided with supply chain issues through MSA Bristol in terms of availability of their commercial assets, commercial washers, just due to a technical fault, essentially, that took one of those assets offline. Since the summer, we've been very responsive, working with MSA, and a number of changes have come into place already to put us on a better footing. Gareth and Carl referred to it around the specific pieces of PPE that are of real importance. Certainly the flash hoods, which are the hoods that our firefighters wear, and also the gloves. Primarily around that is where there's direct contact between the PPE and the skin, and you don't have the further barrier protection of workwear. We've increased the number of those pieces of PPE that are in circulation in our backup stock. We've improved the response arrangements and kind of the emergency call-out arrangements that we have with MSA. And they're a really important factor in terms of going back to Assemblymember Bakari's question around the efficiency of the contract. It is significant. And whilst Assembly members were on fire stations last week, you may be aware that we had a 25 pump fire out in Southall. So we had 25 fire engines respond to a fire in Southall. Obviously, incidents like that place immediate huge strain on our PPE contract. Yet they don't happen every day. So to try and balance responsiveness with efficiency, we need to have...
I think we're quite glad, generally speaking, that they don't happen every day.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But it's trying to balance the ability to respond to a real spike in demand such as that for everything, including provision of clean PPE, but not having that level of latent capacity within the contract every day, because that would come with an additional cost. So there has been significant improvements, and there's some really quite innovative trials happening in North London at the moment at Edmonton Fire Station, where we're essentially using the radio frequency ID tags that are embedded within PPE, essentially removing all of the paperwork side of, because at the moment when our firefighters come back with contaminated PPE, there is a manual process that needs to be undertaken where they place contaminated PPE in a designated location for laundering and collection, and take fresh PPE. That comes with an element of paperwork and returns being sent, and there is always the opportunity for human error or for paperwork to go missing. The new process, it's a scan of the new PPE that's being taken out of stock, a scan of the PPE that's being put in, and everything that happens in an automated fashion, and replacement stock for the next delivery is added to that fire station. So that is being piloted at the moment and is getting really, really positive feedback, both from firefighters and management at that fire station.
So you're sort of individually microchipping each piece of PPE, as it were?
Yeah.
Wow, that's I didn't know that was happening. And presumably then that is able, the microchip or whatever it is that you're using, can withstand going through all the washing processes.
Yes, yeah, and that's part of the reason for that pilot and trial. Obviously, there's a significant cost to that, so it's just making sure that process is robust. Yeah, because our PP has to survive in a very kind of robust environment. So it's making sure that any technology that we put into it can survive as well.
And can I just check that the MSA washers are now back online?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Yeah. So in July, the Commissioner told the committee that there exists this opportunity in the next procurement of the LFB's PPE to address some of the past issues, either with the contract with MSA or in terms of the specific PPE purchased. And Gareth and Carl were talking about quite some detail about the different pieces of PPE that are required for different types of fire. Could you go into what the opportunities are, or is it just this national NFCC procurement process that we were discussing earlier? Is there any more detail on that? And have you ensured that the LFB is going to be in a really good place to take full advantage of the possibilities that are opening up at this point?
If I give an initial response, I might pass over to Spencer for a fuller response. So, absolutely, the NFCC procurement project for replacement PPE. So, absolutely, London Fire Brigade are front and centre in that, and we're sending a number of our firefighters up to Scotland to take part in the PPE trials, which will put those those potential bidders through their paces as such, and particularly a role that London can play on behalf of the fire service nationally is the representation, certainly amongst our women firefighters going up. And so we're supplying a huge number of our women firefighters to go and make sure that our PPE is fit for purpose for our entire workforce. And then you get from that an economy of scale of going into a national procurement exercise, and also linking our PPE with our workwear so that the two act in unison rather than having them as very separate things, which historically has been the case. We've had a set of workwear that hasn't really spoken to its role as a kind of barrier protection and an element of PPE on the fire ground. At that point, Spencer, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
I mean, obviously, it sounded as though the FBU are very engaged in this process, so it's good to hear that the FBU and the London Fire Brigade are going to be front and centre in this. Sorry, did Adrian want to come in?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Just in terms of opportunities to improve design, so within the new specification, there are some things that have been asked for that should assist in the control of fire contaminants. So Gareth and Carl mentioned the fire hood, and they wished that would be a particle blocking fire hood. That has been specified. So the fire hood, the only fire hood that's been specified is a particle blocking fire hood. Then there are some additional elements of design in terms of the firefighting tunic. So particular points of ingress for smoke and contaminants are at the wrist and at the neck, obviously because they have openings. So they've specified that there should be some cuff control at the wrist, and there should be, wherever possible, some mechanism to have a tighter fitting neck to try and prevent further ingress.
It's really difficult, isn't it? Because we want to protect people with what they're wearing, but and this was a point that I've made over several meetings about having the right kind of equipment for going into a wildfire, because of course the air in general is very warm. So, and it's the same balance, isn't it? You know, you're sending people into a fire, you want to protect them from the fire and the contaminants, but you don't want them to then expire inside their uniform. Yeah,
obviously all of that has to be balanced against thermal comfort. So all of the other requirements of British Standard 469 about the structural firefighting kit, So they're the main improvements.
Thank you. Well, it sounds as though we're going to see some good developments, I hope, in this area. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Assemblyman Clark.
Warm air and toxins. What steps has the LFB taken to ensure it is ready to meet the new inspection standards around breathing apparatus that the HSC will be implementing next year?
Thank you for your question, Assemblyman Clark. So in terms of the, I think we're talking about face fit specifically. Yeah, so HSC recently released some let's call it guidance or a retraction of a previous statement in relation to FaceFit to make it clear that FaceFit for fire rescue services applied to all of the respiratory protective equipment, close-fitting respiratory protective equipment they were using. London Fire Brigade, since the implementation of the MSA breathing apparatus set, has got a programme of FaceFit. All firefighters were face-fitted before they started using the MSA breathing apparatus. And there's a programme of ongoing FaceFit. So firefighters will be face-fitted at a certain frequency regularly over the next years, so that face-fits are repeated.
I think, Adrian, if you could move your microphone closer to you as well. It's I guess they were set back a bit, but it's very difficult to hear you. And has the LFB, it's just, when we're talking about contaminants and airborne contaminants, lots of things obviously coming into fire stations when crews have been out, including the pumps, the equipment, the uniforms that firefighters wear. Has the LFB considered how it could monitor air quality and contaminants within fire stations themselves?
Thank you. So we've done some air quality monitoring in fire stations. There's been a range of activity that's been done over the years. So we've done some specific diesel exhaust emission monitoring, which was done by King's College on our behalf as part of a wider study that they were doing. We've also done some diesel emissions monitoring through Bureau Veritas, who are our contracted scientific advisors. My team have access to some air monitoring equipment, and we have done some air monitoring in a small number of fire stations. I think we intend to do more air monitoring in fire stations. We have recently contracted an outside contractor to do some specific monitoring in the operational support centre. So the operational support centre's a slightly different building in terms of the risk it takes in all of the breathing apparatus sets. It does a significant amount of a breathing apparatus set cleaning there and other operational equipment. So there was a concern amongst staff there that air quality might be reduced. We've done some monitoring specifically there, and actually the air quality is adequate. We don't need to take any further action at the operational support centre.
Okay, and in terms of air quality monitoring, I mean, I know people, just ordinary residents who walk around with air quality monitors. Has any of that ever been done with fire brigade personnel in terms of like handheld monitoring of contaminants they might come across in their work?
Sorry, can I just confirm, you mean monitoring of contaminants, fire contaminants on the incident ground?
Yes.
Yeah, we've done a very small amount of that through Bureau Veritas, who are the contracted scientific advisors. So we had a let's call it an exploratory project. So this is quite difficult to achieve actually, because it meant trying to deploy a scientific advisor to a larger incident with air monitoring equipment, so they could place multiple air monitoring equipment around the incident ground. So the view of that project was to try and make an assessment of air quality back from the entry control point, so where people are generally on the incident ground without wearing breathing apparatus or other respiratory equipment because it's deemed to be safe. So the view there was to just look more broadly at any respiratory risk. So that honestly was exploratory. We haven't done enough of that. We probably need to do more. Other people have done more, but I think there's an intention that London Fire Brigade would generally review its RPE strategy over the next few years as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Assembly Member Turrell.
Thank you, Chair. I think these are best directed at you, Dr. Beving. So, firstly, what has London Fire Brigade learnt about compliance with the contaminants policies and day-to-day practice in the assurance work carried out at individual fire stations and as part of the London Fire Assurance?
I can pick that one up, if you like, Assembly Member Turrell. So, like I say, we've had a team from our internal assurance a team effectively go out on station and directly ask and effectively test our staff around what they know around contaminants. Have also directly observed practices. It's fair to say I've recently reviewed those results, and there's certainly increased awareness required. So I think it might have even been an example that we touched on earlier. And I absolutely wouldn't want this to sound like I'm criticising our firefighters. I think they've been incredible on the journey that we've had the last 4 or 5 years, but we've still got examples around gloves going into helmets, and gloves in helmets is probably one of the worst places you could put them, because naturally they're exposed to or they're highly likely to be exposed to contaminants, and you wouldn't want anything near your face and exposed skin. So it's just that ongoing journey of kind of awareness and cultural change, moving away from that badge of honour from dirty kit towards clean kit. So like I say, I want to combine, I was speaking to Andy this morning about the best approach to this. We'd like to combine that with the results that we're going to get from the incident ground and do a really kind of holistic awareness programme, and there might be some actual kind of operational stuff to deliver with our senior officers as well. So we're going to bring that in the new year.
Excellent. Thank you for that answer. So the Health and Safety Executive inspection campaign of the fire and service rescue is due to begin in Q4 of 25 to 26. Are you confident that the London Fire Brigade's policies and practices are sufficient to meet those standards?
Yes. So I think, as Gareth and Carl alluded to earlier, I think the policy position in London is good. So our approach to fire contaminants, I think, would generally satisfy the Health and Safety Executive's requirements.
Thank you very much. Assembly Member Hall.
Thank you. It must be very difficult if you've spent years as a firefighter putting your gloves in your helmet and then you've got to stop. Although, you know, you can think, well, of course you've got to stop, but old habits die hard, don't they? It must be quite difficult for them. The question, though, is what key findings have emerged from the Business Assurance Thematic Review on the fire contaminants, and what changes will result?
Yeah, thank you, Assembly Member Hall. I think I've kind of touched upon them. So there's certainly a need for greater awareness around keeping each other safe, whether that's on the incident ground, although we've got those results to come, but certainly around the station, making sure that contaminated kit is kept away from clean kit or areas of the station that need to be clean. Looks like there's a shortfall in some of the training returns of our more senior officers, so that's to follow up as well. I think they're the kind of two headline takeaways at the moment.
Okay, and will you actually publish the findings of the review?
Still to be decided, I think, Assembly Member Hall. I certainly share with our internal colleagues that absolutely have, our FBU colleagues would have, there's nothing to hide regarding that. Whether we publish wider than that would still be to be decided.
What's stopping you publishing wider than that? Don't look at anybody in the audience.
I think it's an internal review we wouldn't normally publish beyond ourselves. I think the important thing is to set up the actions and recommendations and get them done.
Yeah, transparency, though. We do love transparency, don't we? And whoever's in the audience looking at you, I'm sure, agrees too.
The FBU do an amazing job in holding us to account, that's for sure.
They certainly do. They always have. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Commissioner, you'll have heard me ask before about the mats that are down. Could I just ask if there's any work planned to make them better for firefighters?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That, along with our FBU colleagues, that's a new one for us. I mean, from my understanding, that's effectively a blue tarpaulin, and just as the issue was raised, of course, you've got to balance various things with that. Something that is durable, can be cleaned, can be disposed of after a reasonable amount of time, and then obviously you're balancing the risk to that. But it's the first time I've heard those concerns raised. When they've been explained, I'm not hugely surprised, because you know, in windy conditions it could be subject to being blown around, and I wouldn't necessarily say chaotic, but there's something to look at. And I think the committees that are currently in place with our FBU colleagues and other representative bodies, we can work through that.
Thank you. A final set of questions on health screening from Assemblymember Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple on health screening. It's something that we have discussed quite a few times in the past, and I've also seen some really interesting initiatives that different firefighters have undertaken, particularly around mental health, actually. But I want to start by just asking you something about whether or not routine screening of firefighters could be enhanced in terms of the programme of medical screening that you do to assess for a wider range of health issues specific to the kind of environments that firefighters might be in and that might impact on them.
I'll just make one overarching comment before I bring in Adrian, if I can. If the efficacy is there and we have some tests that we can rely upon, of course we're absolutely open to it. But I'll bring Adrian in just to comment further if I can.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are sort of pros and cons about screening programmes, and in fact it's just been in the news about whether or not prostate screening should be offered to all men of a certain age or certain background, and it's been decided not, and it should be very much more targeted. But it would be interesting to know if there's something you feel that could be offered to firefighters.
Thank you, Assembly Member Cooper. Yeah, so health screening is a particular focus, I think, for a number of people globally in terms of what could be provided to firefighters. So at the moment, what we have is a routine periodic medical that's done every 3 years. It does a basic cardiorespiratory health check, including spirometry for lung function, and there is an asbestos-specific element to the RPM. So you could say that the asbestos-specific element is health monitoring for mesothelioma, which is one of the cancers of concern. We have been actively involved in looking at other health screening. At the moment, we don't think that there is anything that is viable in terms of those things that might be called a multi-cancer detection test, which are often talked about, so blood tests for cancer that you might periodically give to firefighters. There is nothing available or signed off on the UK market as suitable for that purpose. We have been monitoring the Gallery trial, which is being done by the NHS, which is a study of sorts, and have actually, London Fire Brigade and Imperial College together have spoken to the people administering the Gallery trial to see if there was anything that they thought that we could do specifically for firefighters, and we don't think that there is. So just in terms of bladder cancer, the other cancer that is obviously of more concern, there's nothing really that is available in terms of the bladder cancer health surveillance space that would be suitable for firefighters. Obviously, health surveillance needs to be specific, it needs to be measurable, it needs to be reproducible. It also needs to have an outcome, a positive outcome, so you need to be able to do some treatment or such afterwards. And then you've got these other issues about latency. So that causes a problem in its own right. So for bladder cancer, for example, that's generally 20 years latency. For mesothelioma, that might be up to 40 years latency. So the point at which you do health surveillance is also important. So the National Fire Chiefs Council Contaminants Working Group has got a specific work stream that's looking at health surveillance. We're expecting that to report, I think, in the next quarter, if not the start of the next financial year. We don't think it's going to make any recommendations for fire rescue services for additional health screening at this point in time, but obviously we're keeping a close eye on what can be done.
I mean,
in that
presumably
space.
keeping a very close eye, because this seems to me to be a part of medicine where there are new developments all the time coming through in terms of early detection, which of course is the big thing that helps people, you know, have treatment very early and helps save lives. So I presume this is something you're keeping a firm eye on?
Yeah, absolutely. So London Fire Brigade's formed links with a number of different academic institutions. We've got close links in the UK, close links with research groups in America. So Alberto Cabo-Martinez, who was here in your previous trial, he's got some close colleagues that we have spent time with. So yeah, we're absolutely keeping an eye on what can be proportionately done in this space, yeah.
Okay, and coming back to the point that I started to make, low-cost interventions that can be extremely effective. And I know there's been a few that particular firefighters have championed. One was just about going out for a walk with friends, and I think he won an award, actually, the person who started that at one of the firefighters' awards ceremonies that I went to. Are there any others that are being sort of promoted within the brigade to sort of help people? I mean, they seem to change their minds all the time about whether 10,000 steps a day, or whether you need to do 15 minutes of getting breathless a day, or working out in the gym in every fire station every day for half an hour. I mean, there seems to be a lot of range of things. Are there low-cost interventions that the brigade is promoting to firefighters and supporting?
Yeah, so London Fire Brigade's got quite a range of offer in the mental health space. So I'm responsible for the wellbeing team where that sits as well. So probably from the most involved bit down. So we have an internal counselling service. So that caters for all aspects of work-related psychological health and stuff outside of work. We've recently implemented an employee assistance programme that's got also an alternative counselling offer, so people can choose to go for counselling entirely out of London Fire Brigade if they would like to. And there's some additional elements of support within the employee assistance programme we've just implemented. And then you've referred to walk and talk. We also have the wellbeing dogs and a range of other things that we do in terms of mental health support. And we actively point to a range of things outside of London Fire Brigade for people who've got particular concerns. So where PTSD has been an issue, resolving the PTSD has been a problem, we will signpost people to specific charities where they can get an alternative intervention.
And presumably one of the issues would still be about trying to make sure that people don't feel that there's any kind of stigma about addressing things like their mental health or mental well-being or PTSD. And obviously, being on a fire ground, being on an incident ground, you might, or even attending a road traffic accident, you might see some really horrible things. So are we now more in a position where people feel more comfortable to say, actually, I think I need to, take some time out or address it through, CBT or whatever else might be on offer?
Yeah, thank you, Assembly Member. I think I might be going out on a little bit of a limb, actually, but I do think we've broken that stigma now. It's been a long journey, and I think I can speak personally that I've also, fully accept that mental health is absolutely critical to the well-being of our staff. Adrian, I think, has probably only touched upon a proportion of the offer, the wider well-being and mental health offer that we've now got available for our staff. So they've got choice. So we really understand that, and we've firmed up a really great partnership actually with the firefighter charity. So we've supported a number of watches through varying circumstances, some of them quite tragic over the last few years, where they've gone down as a whole watch to the firefighter charity and been provided a bespoke kind of mental health support package for the week. And Adrian's covered a couple of other elements where we've partnered with third-party provided as well. So I do think that the stigma is now broken, and people are fairly comfortable in talking about their mental health challenges, but obviously, continue to do that work.
Sure. I mean, we do still want the firefighters to be, very fit, very healthy, very tough, able to deal with all of those challenges, but actually then being able to reflect about the challenges that you've gone through doesn't mean to say that all the other things that I just said at the beginning of that sentence are no longer true. And I think if we are getting to that place in the fire brigade, then that can only be a good thing in terms of people being able to do their job, but then not have their job impact on them in that way. So those are sort of lower level. And you might have gone into a fire where there's loads of contaminants and come out of it feeling very concerned. So I think it's really important that we address that. Thank you, Chair. I'll be quiet.
Thank you very much. And on that subject, can I just commend Amber, who's at Poplar Fire Station, who showed me and Assembly Member Bukhari around the mental health space they created, where they're doing yoga and incense and books, and it was a pretty chilled space to be in for an Assembly Member, so I can imagine it was great for a firefighter too. Thank you very much. I don't believe there's any further questions, so I'll just say thank you very much to all of our guests from the London Fire Brigade for the answers to our questions. We've got a few short items of business, so feel free to leave the chamber, or please do stay there, whatever you choose. Can we note the report and today's discussion?
Noted.
Can we also delegate authority to me as chair in consultation with party group lead members to agree any output from the discussion? Assembly Member Hall is very keen. Can the committee note its work programme for 2025-2026? Can I also ask the committee to note the additional activity undertaken, namely informal briefing with the London Fire Brigade on fire contaminants, the informal meeting to welcome the new London Fire Brigade Deputy Commissioners, and last week's fire station visits to support the investigation into the risk of contaminants?
Noted.
Thank you. The next meeting of the committee is scheduled for 13th of January 2026 at 10 a.m. in the Chamber, City Hall. I have no other urgent business. I now declare this meeting to be closed.